Hey everyone, Keenan Crow here, and today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, MIDI. MIDI is something that I didn't understand at all when I was first starting out as a guitarist, but now it's something that I use almost every time I make music. MIDI is an extremely powerful tool, but it's also widely misunderstood, and that prevents people from integrating it into their workflow. So let's get into it and unpack the ins and outs of MIDI so that you can start using it today. So let's start with the basics. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, and it's best thought of as a shared language that enabled devices can use to communicate with one another. MIDI can do a wide range of things, from sending timing and pitch information to adjusting parameters on an effects processor. MIDI was invented literally before I was born and has been widely adopted by electronic music equipment manufacturers since the 1980s. It is often integrated into keyboard instruments and to digital audio workstations, but it's increasingly integrated into guitar pedals and even into guitars themselves. One super important thing about understanding MIDI is understanding what MIDI can't do. And what MIDI can't do is transmit audio. It's only control information. So while you can use MIDI to tell a software instrument or a drum machine how to play a song, you're never gonna get any sound out of your MIDI cables. It's just that digital control info. So now that we understand what MIDI can't do, let's look at what MIDI can do. MIDI-enabled devices can send and receive different kinds of commands. Now, some devices can understand certain commands and not others, so it's important that you match the devices based on what they can both send and receive. Some of the most common types of commands are notes, program changes, continuous controllers, and clock information. Note commands are relatively straightforward. For every note you hit on a MIDI-enabled keyboard, it's sending information about which note you hit, how hard you hit it, and for how long. If you've ever used a piano roll inside your digital audio workstation, or you've ever used a MIDI-enabled keyboard instrument, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And when most people think about MIDI, they're thinking of these types of note commands. The lesser known MIDI functions are, I think, some of the more useful ones for guitar players, especially if you've already got some MIDI enabled pedals. Program change commands are primarily for changing presets. They tell a device to change from whatever program it's running at the moment to a different program. So for instance, my Strymon timeline has 99 different presets. I can choose any one of those and send a MIDI command to select that preset using either a foot controller or my DAW. And that's the extremely powerful thing about using MIDI as a guitar player, is that it allows you to use individual stomp boxes without having to do the pedal dance. So check this out. Let's say I have a verse section and a chorus section, and in order to get into the chorus, I have to change 4 different pedals. In a standard stomp box setup, that would mean hitting 4 switches as quickly as possible while still trying to play all the right notes. But watch this. Here, all I'm doing is hitting 1 switch on my FCB 1010 MIDI controller, and it's changing multiple pedals all at the same time. In fact, with MIDI, you don't have to touch any pedals at all. You can use your digital audio workstation to control the pedals for you while you focus on playing your instrument. Next up, continuous controllers. Unlike program change commands, which just have one value, which is the program number, continuous control commands have 2 different values. They have the program number, essentially, although it's called a CC number, and they have another value. It could be either one value or a range of values. So for instance, maybe I want to control a pitch shifter. I would set the CC number to control pitch over on my pedal, and then I would set the range to however high or low I want that pitch to go. Then I can assign it to something like an expression pedal, and there you go. Now I can control my pitch with my expression pedal. Now that's just an example. It doesn't have to be pitch related. You can control pretty much anything that your pedal allows you to. For instance, the time or feedback on a delay, the depth of a modulation pedal, or the mix level on a reverb. And again, you can use your DAW to automate any of this. That can be a huge help when your effects have to perform complex tasks over and over again in the exact same way. For instance, in a studio environment where consistency is key. Finally, we have the MIDI clock function, which is widely overlooked by guitarists, and I think shouldn't be. MIDI clock sends tempo information that can synchronize devices to one another. You can use this to lock in stacked delays, lock in 2 different effects with each other, like a delay and a modulation pedal that need to be in the same time, or even just lock in a loop pedal on your guitar rig with a beat on your DAW. If you're trying to synchronize hardware devices together, or trying to synchronize hardware and software, I can't tell you how much easier your life will be by using MIDI clock. Even just playing to a beat with a delay is world worlds easier when you have MIDI Clock locking in the exact tempo for you. You'll get consistent results every time without having to try. So there you have it, a brief overview of MIDI and how you can use it to get your effects and your DAW talking to one another, stop doing the pedal dance, and simplify your music making. I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did, please like and subscribe so that you can get future tutorials, and I'll see you next time.